Hey everybody, today is a masterclass in how to make a brick book. And in particular, today, if you can see up close, we've got, instead of our normal Holland pavers, we've got an old brick that's got big old chips and chunks out of it. And that's okay. You can get those usually free off of Facebook Marketplace, or maybe you have one lying around your yard or garage. But anyway, these make great books because when you put the cover on them, those big gouges, you can make those look like they're gouges in the old book cover and stuff like that. So we're going to, I think that's going to be the back and this is going to be the front. In any case, I've got a brick and I already Mod Podged it. So Mod Podge, brush, and I put it on in a stippling effect on all of the sides that aren't where there are going to be pages. In the pages sides, you want to brush the Mod Podge in straight lines so that if it dries and there are lines in it, that'll help with the illusion of the pages. And so that's what we've done here. We've stippled this and done straight lines on the page edges. Now that we've done that, the next thing to do is mark our where the edges of our pages are going to be, or where the binding is on the book. So I'm going to use a little ruler and a Sharpie just to mark this so that I have lines to stay within. And I give it about somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch. And I just draw a line. And then I'm going to do the same thing, and that's going to represent the cover. So you can see on this one that's got big chips in it that we're going to be well into almost even into the pages, so it's going to be a fun one to do. Alright, so after I've drawn my lines on my book, I am going to paint the cover. And I just try to get a match paint to whatever cover I'm using. And so in this case, Tuscan Red. I think it should do a pretty good job of matching it. And I'm going to do this, you can see I'm in one of those gouges. That's actually going to end up being the white material of the book under the cover color is going to end up showing. But for right now, I just want to get the book, what's the best way to put it? I'm going to act like, I'm going to start with the book as it would be a new book, and then I'm going to antique it and age it down. So as far as the scuffs and marks and all that stuff, those are going to get added where they're appropriate. But first I want to get the book in its better form, as it would have been when it was new. Now it's time to do the pages, since we've got our cover roughed out. And basically what I do to give it a lot of variety and make it look more realistic is I use about 3 or 4 different colors, natural colors, to do the pages. And I start with a really light base, and I'll put this on in a brushing motion, straight line brushing motion, because I want to keep everything going like pages, the way pages would naturally be. So if it ends up with any lines in it, it ends up with lines because that's how the pages go. So then after I've got my base coat done, I'm going to start adding some lines in this with different colors, and we're going to blend them in some. But the point is to try to keep your lines as straight as you possibly can. If you want, you can also use a straight edge to help put your lines in. And you can blend so that you end up with even more color variation. Because this is an old book, so you want it to look, you want a lot of variety, you want a lot of texture, you want a lot of history to what's happened to this book. Okay, and once you've started to get your lines down for your books, we're going to move on to the damage to the cover. We're going to want to pick a color that we like for the damaged parts that are going to be recessed. And we're just going to, same thing as before, we're just going to dab this in. Because this is the underskin, the pulp of the, or if this is a leather bound book, this is the inside of the leather that's not actually dyed. The outer surface of the leather is dyed red. This is the inside of the leather, so it kind of needs to be a bit of a tan. And that's what we're going to do right here. And then we'll, this book has a lot of damage, man. This is fun. Okay, now I'm going back and cleaning up my lines over where my pages are, and I'm making a break where the damage is to the book. So it's not going to be as thick a line. Any place there's damage. Because this is representing a shadow between the cover and the pages that doesn't exist where the damage is. And then I'm going to go back with a Sharpie, and where the damage is, I'm going to, with a fine point Sharpie, I'm going to go along and I'm going to make the actual shadow that would be there for the book damage. And I may have to touch up a little red right there, but when you're drawing around these, the damaged areas, two things. One, you want to make sure that paint's dry, because if it's not, you'll ruin the tip of your Sharpie and you'll go through a lot of Sharpie. So make sure your paint's dry first. And then I'm just going around these to create the illusion of depth. And when you're making a shadow that represents the depth of something, the wider the line, the deeper the hole or scar or whatever is. So in these, you want to keep this the line relatively thin. You don't want to make them too wide or they look too deep, unless of course you've got a really deep one, and then go ahead. But I'm just keeping them pretty thin, and I'm staying right on the edge where the two colors come together, and just making a ragged line. so that it will help give the illusion that there's some depth there and that's a shadow. So we're going to add some black page lines to help make it look like there are some pages, shadows, and you can make these wrinkly or you can make them straight. I tend to make them straight, but if you're making them straight, you'll want to make sure that you're staying as straight as you can, because your pages are otherwise, like, you couldn't have a diagonal in there, right? Because a page wouldn't be diagonal. So, and I try to make them not the same as far as the width every time I draw a line where I'm putting it. So sometimes it's good to have a couple really close together. Sometimes it's good to have them overlapping. Have some that are darker than others. Make sure you go over a few of them, you go over the corner of the book, especially if there's some page where it's damaged. And then on this, to also make this look like the pages have I make a secondary line right here, and then I go in and I put tiny little X's, and it doesn't have to be specific how many, but these represent the stitches in the binding that hold the pages into the spine. And so it just adds a little, and I don't really do that on my normal books, but I do on this. And now it's time to add our Winnie the Pooh cover. So we're going to cut this guy out. And this one is a little bigger than the size of this book, so I'll make a preliminary cut, and then I'll turn it upside down, center the brick on the other side, and make new marks as to where it needs to be cut. Okay, so now I'm applying a layer of Mod Podge to act as the glue that's going to hold this down. And excuse my red there, my brush was not cleaned out as well as it should have been, and that's not too big a deal because the cover is going to cover that up. But anyway, I'm using the Mod Podge to work it on top of the acrylic, and then I'm going to coat the back of Winnie the Pooh, and that I can just put on in a straight brushing motion is fine. You don't want to go too heavy on the paper coat, because you don't want the paper to absorb too much of it and get really, well, you can damage the paper. So more of it on there than on here, and not a ton on there either.
Kind of got to get this put on and pressed down, and then you can see where once it's on, there's not a lot of removing this thing. It's sticking pretty good. But now you got to take a gander at where you need to trim the paper back around your damaged spots of the brick.
Okay, so there we have our Winnie the Pooh beat up book brick. And you should always, with the Mod Podge, read the instructions. If this is going to go outside and in the weather, you want to make sure that this has had time to fully cure, which according to Mod Podge is 4 weeks. So if you stick it outside before then and it gets rained on and it ruins your project, don't say Jeff McKay said I could stick it outside. It's got to be 4 weeks for it to fully cure, and then it can go out in the weather. Otherwise, seal it with a coat of polyurethane clear coat, exterior grade, and you'll be good, or an exterior spray clear coat would also work.